approaching 100 feet right now. I'll wait till we're about like 400 feet up so you get a good visual of what's going on. So I'll pan around so you get some context of what I'm about to show you. And what you're about to see is an idea of what once was. So in this video, we're going to talk about commercial real estate and the possible future, or at least what I think the possible future could look like. So right here, not that long ago, there were 4 businesses that were household names, and now they're no longer here. To the left, you have what was once Burger King. Then in that corner above, you have what was once Modell's. Next to Modell's, you have what was once Macy's, and next to Macy's you have what was widely known as Toys R Us, and now none of them are there. Parking lot is completely empty. It's like this parking lot is now only used for spin class. Macy's is gone. What? Toys R Us still has their sign up at least. Now the Burger King had closed shortly after the Macy's shut down, and that's probably due to the lack of foot traffic they was getting once Macy's closed their doors. So besides the other 3, we can say that Burger King probably closed most likely due to bad location at the time. But the other 3, Macy's, Modell's, and Toys R Us, they were heading this direction anyway. For the other 3, Modell's, Macy's, and Toys R Us, I don't think a change of location would have made much of a difference. About 3 miles from here, we have a Sears and a Pier 1 that were facing the same fate. The clip I just showed you will be the outcome of a lot more well-known businesses, and in my opinion, it's not due solely to the virus. The virus just simply sped up the timeline. Yes, I know Macy's and Modell's are technically still operating businesses, but in case you weren't aware, Macy's have been closing their stores for quite a few years now, and Modell's were already in talks about bankruptcy prior to this pandemic going on. Also, to be fair, these specific locations were going out of business prior to the virus. Toys R Us in 2018, Sears in 2019, Pier 1 in 2019, and Modell's, as I mentioned earlier, was already in talks about bankruptcy prior to the virus. None of that changes the fact that these businesses and other businesses were ultimately going to meet this fate regardless if this virus was coming or not. A lot of businesses, commercial and residential properties included, were and are over leveraged. Without getting too complicated, they were living paycheck to paycheck just like the average American was. Once some of these businesses hit unexpected hard times, such as a major player coming along that has heavy online presence and is able to offer 2-day shipping, we see that they're not able to keep up. Or once we're in a pandemic like the one that we're facing right now, which forces some businesses to close temporarily, we see that they're not able to weather the storm without asking money from the government 2 weeks into it. So all the virus did was just speed up that timeline and put a spotlight on how most of these businesses were operating, and they won't be successful unless they get a bailout from the government. So the question is, what now? What will happen to some of these businesses once they fail during this climate? Well, fortunately, some of these companies will be purchased by other companies that have the cash on deck to do it, such as Apple. Or maybe Warren Buffett comes in and buys an airline or 2. Who knows? The other companies, they won't be so lucky. But that does present some opportunity, at least in the residential market space, for some of these companies and old businesses and old spaces to be repurposed for residential apartments, at least in my market. There's currently a housing crisis, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see that a lot of these spaces are being repurposed to supply the needs for residential apartments. With rental prices already high in most areas and lenders such as JP changing the requirements, stating that you need a 700 FICO score and 20% down to qualify, that'll make it much more difficult for the average American to get into their first home. And that will also increase the renters pool. I think a few smart investors will take advantage of these commercial spaces and turn them into residential apartments. They can supply the housing crisis since there's a demand for housing and still make money on the space that's currently not being used in the future. So what do you see in your area? Do you see a decrease in rental prices? Do you see a ton of commercial units that are now vacant? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.